Okay, guys. So I guess we'll start 6:30. I don't know how many viewers are there. I think there's only three, because a lot of people said they were coming. So hopefully they'll join us. But I'll kind of get into this. I have a lot of stuff to talk about today. A lot of what the followers have sent me in regards to questions. I've actually incorporated it into this talk. So let's just talk about what we're going to do. I have like a little intro here. So this is session 3. I can't believe we're on session 3. So first, we're going to talk about seasonal beekeeping management and essential tips. So by that, I mean the beekeeping calendar. So what do we do in March? What do we do in April? What do we do in September? These are all key uh, periods in a beekeeper's calendar that we have to do different things in order to protect and make the most of our hives. Then we're going to talk about different feeding methods. And by that, I mean either pollen or nectar or sugar syrup or fontanette. We're going to talk about installing and checking your nuc. So what happens when you get home with your nuc? What are the steps? What do you do? And what is your first hive check on your nuc supposed to be all about? We're going to talk the essential beekeeping equipment. I had someone discuss that with me and said, okay, what do I only need to start? So we're going to go over that. We're going to talk about drones. I had a question from a follower wanting to know all about drones. So, you know what? Drones are not talked about enough, as far as I'm concerned. When you go to a beekeeping chat, they're not really talked about. So we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about their different characteristics, their roles. We're going to talk about bee stings and how to avoid them. And yes, you can avoid them. And then we're going to talk about communication in the bee world. So the round dance, we're going to talk about the waggle dance. And if we get to it, I'm going to talk about common bee diseases and pests. All that's a heck of a lot. So I'm not sure if we'll actually get to that point. If we do, we can go forward and we kind of can do it. If not, I guess I'll have to have a fourth session because I think it's really important to talk about the different diseases, even though in Newfoundland, we don't have a lot of the diseases that I'm going to talk about. We still need to know about them just in case they actually come. So that's the last. So hopefully we'll get to that. If not, we'll have to do a number 4. Okay, here we go. So we're going to talk about seasonal management of honeybee colonies. So we're going to talk about summer management. We're going to talk about autumn or fall. We're going to talk about winter, and we're going to talk about in spring. So all of those different seasons, you have different things you need to do to prepare your hive in order for your hive to remain healthy throughout the year. So summer, we all love summer, and regardless of what some beekeepers say, even in the summer, you still have to look at your hives and monitor them because a lot of different things can happen to them during the summer months. So the big thing with summer is regular inspections to help maintain colony stability and prevent swarming. So when I think of summer, and when I think of June, I think of swarming. And again, I'm going to go on this rant, and that I really feel that beekeepers, if they maintain their proper hygiene checks once a week during the summer months, it would actually decrease or eliminate your hives from swarming. As I said before, bees give hints that they're going to swarm. There's a lot of buildup of drone cone. There's, the queen is probably a little bit slimmer. They actually produce swarm cells at the bottom of the cell. So those are all hints that you need to take and do the proper precautions, either split or take those swarm cells and make another box. So there's different things that you can do. So again, inspect signs for swarming, monitor for signs for swarming. And yes, this happens in the summer, but you know what? Late in the summer, like August, I've heard of bees swarm. So it can be different. And it's also different on where you live. For example, some of my beekeeper friends in Oklahoma and all these places, they're actually swarming in March. So you need to be really mindful of that. So increased drone production. If you're going through your hive in the summer months and you see a shitload of drone in the bottom of the frame, because that's where they usually put them because they can actually make the cells bigger to hold the drone brood. That's a sign for swarming. If your hive is incredibly chunch full of bees, it's another sign of swarming, and the presence of queen cups or queen cells along the edge frames. So how do we prevent swarming from happening? So we add supers or frames to reduce congestion. So the main reason, one of the main reasons why bees swarm is because of lack of space. So they run out of space. So basically bees are on top of each other. So what happens is that bees transfer the queen's pheromone or the queen's perfume by touch. So if there's a lot of bees in that box, they're not able to touch one another to pass the pheromone. So the bees kind of feel they're without a queen, or they're not getting a real strong sense of a queen. So as a result, they think they have to reproduce, which would be meaning of a swarm. Rotate brood boxes and provide space for laying eggs. So if you have a hive that's chock full of brood, it's okay to take some of those brood frames and you can add it to a hive that's not as strong to kind of increase their population. And that would actually help the bees from not swarming. And remove excess queen cells if necessary. So by that, I mean the swarm cells on the bottom of the frame. You can actually take those out. And if it's a wax frame underneath, you can cut those swarm cells out and place it in another box with some brood and some nursery bees, and they'll actually create another queen. So you can actually expand your apiary just by the swarm cells that you get. And consider splitting if swarming is imminent. So sometimes even if we do all that, the bees are still in the mindset to swarm. So we can actually trick them somewhat and consider them doing a fake swarm by actually splitting. So if we split the box, sometimes the bees think that, okay, we've already swarmed, so they won't swarm. That's sometimes, but again, that's another option that you have. And again, I don't mean to sound like a parrot, but regular inspections help maintain colony stability and prevent swarming. So, real hot day. How do we increase the ventilation in the hives for the honeybees? Again, honeybees are really great at producing their own air conditioning or ventilation. I showed you a video last week of all the bees there at the bottom of the entrance, and they will do their own fanning, and that produces their own air conditioning. So yes, they can ventilate. However, if you're getting a really hot day, exactly what do we do for that? So you can tilt the hive box lid. So this is what this person's doing here and here. And that's just basically letting the air flow throughout the hive. You can use a ventilated inner cover. And again, that allows the air to kind of circulate better throughout the hive. And this is basically just prop it open with an outer stick. Doesn't look fancy, but you know what? As long as you're getting air throughout the hive, it's doing its purpose. Increase the entrance of the hive entrance. And that allows when the bees are on the bottom board, the air that they circulate by flapping their wings is going to go in a little bit better if they have a wider opening. With that, I also want to say if you increase your opening in your hive, you also have to remember increased opening means it's easier for wasps to get in and harass them, or other pests like rats or shrews. Even though they will usually not go into a really strong hive, they still might. So just be mindful of that. Either use, the big wire across your screen to prevent that from happening. Again, it doesn't have to be up for a long time. It could be just an hour or two just to help the air circulate through the hive. Add upper entrances. So this person here has a little circle here, and that's basically just a hole that air can go in and out, increasing the ventilation. And use bottom screen boards. Now, I'm not a fan of bottom screen boards. Some people live by them. Again, that increases ventilation and mite control. I don't know. I'm not sold on them. I did use them before. I'm just not a fan, and there's no particular reason. But just, you can do that. And again, simple things like provide shade, and that would help decrease the temperature in the hive. And make sure water is always available. Honeybees love water, love them. A lot of people really don't provide the proper fresh water for them. But I think it's important to actually do that because they use that water for air conditioning and also for in the hive for like in the nectar to make it honey. So again, these are the pests. Now we're stepping into fall in September to November. This is a very active time for beekeepers in their apiary. You have to prepare your hives for the fall and the winter to come. Let's see here. So First thing you do is remove surplus honey while ensuring the hive has enough stores for the winter. So basically, I can only comment here in Newfoundland, we have to leave about 60 to 90 pounds of honey on the hive, and that gives the honeybees enough resources to actually go through the winter. So that's a must. If there's any more than that, simply you can take them out. You can put them in other hives to help them get through the winter, or you can put them in your freezer and maybe, you know what, you'll need it later on in the spring to help out your hives. So you could do that. And again, if honey stores are low, plan for supplementary feeding. So I'm a big fan in the fall. I feed, and I feed sugar syrup. And I have a secret recipe from Bob Binney I'm going to put up in a little bit. So let's just go on. I'm probably after talking about all these, but again, final hive inspection, you really want to do that before the temperature gets too cold. Usually 10 degrees under is too cold for a hive inspection. Remember, bees come out when it's like 15 degrees or warmer. So you want to do that when it's not really cold for them. But again, while you're going through that, you're looking for your queen, you're looking to make sure she's laying. And again, when we're getting to September and November, your queen is not going to be laying a heck of a lot. She cuts back on laying, and that's because of just the season. So if you don't see a hell of a lot of brood, that's okay. It's not a big deal. They do cut back. Again, in places other than Newfoundland, we really need to kind of look at your varroa mite count at that time, and that's going in September, November, going into the winter. The varroa mite, if you treat this time of year, it means that the hive has less varroa mites going through the winter. Again, this is a really easy check for varroa mites over here. And what you do is you get about, and I hate doing this, but I do it, half a cup of bees, which is about 300 bees, and you put like a half a cup of liquid, and you can either be either dish soap or windshield wash, and you put that in the bottom of this easy check, and you give it a good shake around. Make sure it's about 30 seconds of a shake, and eventually all the varroa mites, the little mites, will be on the bottom. It's a little screen here, so the varroa mites are kind of filtered out, and you can count your varroa checks on the bottom to see how many is there. Depending on your count, depends on if you need to treat or not. Again, even though we don't do this in Newfoundland, I'm a big fan of you need to know about it, just in case varroa comes here at some point. And again, fall, you always look of how to protect your hive for pests and rodent protection. Again, I often say sometimes you have to think like a rat or a mouse. They can get in really small spaces. That's why I'm a big fan, even with my hives up in my shed, I still have this wire around them, and it's big enough that the worker bees can come out when they want. However, the rats can't get in. So I think that's important, maybe most of the year round. And again, September is really bad for yellow jackets. They're horrible this time of year. They're actually kicked out of their hive, so they're looking for stuff to eat. So they'll actually come to where your apiary is and try to get as much sugar syrup as they can. Some people I've heard actually do open feeding in the fall. I'm not a fan of it, simply because you're going to have every bee and more in your neighborhood, plus wasps and everything else, because of the end of season. So I'm not a fan of open feeding at that time of year. So preparing for the winter, again, I can only go with Newfoundland, and we have a really yucky winter. So we have to insulate well. I think we're like Ontario, Halifax, New Brunswick, all of those guys have the same kind of winter as we do. So adjust it accordingly. So I'm a real big fan of keeping the bees warm. I hate the thought of them being cold. So what I use is 1.5 or 2 inch rigid insulation, and that goes around the hive. This is exactly how I do it. However, I actually use Gorilla Tape, fabulous stuff. So I put that all around the hive, and then I cover it with garbage bags, big old industrial garbage bags, and that's to prevent the water from getting on the insulation. And then I put Gorilla Tape all around all that. And then if you want, you can put a bee cozy on that around. Again, depends, and always use a ratchet strap. I'm a big fan of the top pillow. This is a new thing that kind of came out in the last little while. So the top pillow can be like 8 inches of insulation. Again, I use the rigid insulation, put that on the top of your hive. And basically what that does is it prevents the heat from escaping up through the top. So it just provides another bit of heat for the honeybees. Again, with that though, you have to make sure that you have proper ventilation. So it's kind of really tricky to kind of get the right. If you close up your entrance too much, you're going to get a lot of moisture and mold buildup in your hive. And we always have to think that wet bees are dead bees. So my piece of advice is to keep your bottom entrance completely open. It may seem crazy, but it works. So keep that open, put the pillow top on top, and you know what? You're going to be good. Food stores, and some people maybe know this, but again, 60 to 90 pounds in Newfoundland on your hive for it to get through the winter. So 10 frame deep filled with honey is about 100 pounds. So you can judge it by that. So usually the frames are like 2 pounds each when they're filled with honey. So go with that. And again, if you feel that you don't have that, feed in the fall, and hopefully they will get enough in the hive to survive the winter. If not, you can also put sugar patties or fondant in your hive. Okay, so combining weak hives. So we always say in the fall, take your losses in the fall. By that, we mean, you know what, if you have a little bit of a weak colony, it's better to combine that weak colony with another colony because it gives them better chance of surviving the winter. That's for me, for example, I had like 18 hives. I combined most of them and made it a bigger hive. But that leaves me with like 11 hives up there now. So, but in the spring when it comes, I'm just going to pop the boxes off and bam, I have a brand new hive and they'll go ahead and make a new queen. So again, this picture here, yes, you have to combine your colonies. If it's queen right or queenless, usually you put the queenless on top and put a paper on the newspaper in the middle. By the time the queen right chews up through the paper, they've actually gotten the smell of their queenless people upstairs, and the same otherwise would be like the queenless bees get the smell of their new queen, and it's just an easier integration for both of them. However, and this is where I don't really like it, if you're combining hives in the fall, you also are combining hives sometimes that have two queens. In that case, usually the bees just sort it out. So the toughest queen wins, and the toughest queen will kill the weaker queen, and then that will go through the winter season. I don't like that, but again, it's better than losing a complete hive. And this is like reducing hive space. So like if you have this box over here, this hive here with two boxes, if there's not a lot on this top box, I would actually just take it off, and I would just make sure that the bottom box has enough resources for the bees to chow down on through the winter and not starve. I always think of bees like a tight and toasty. By that, I mean the less space they have to heat, the happier they're going to be. Remember, bees have to eat honey in order to maintain the temperature. That gives them strength to shake and all their body muscles to increase that temperature in the hive. The less space they have to heat, the less work they have to do. So that's why I think it's important to decrease the amount of boxes as you need. Very, very few people would go in with like 3 boxes on, or even 2 sometimes. They usually always melt them down to 1. This happened to a friend of mine, a new beekeeper. She was getting ready to do her winterization to her hives. She forgot to take the queen excluder out of her hive, and sadly, she actually lost that hive. And it's basically because in the winter, the bees travel in their cluster. They shift up and down through the hive to where the honey is. And if the bees weren't able to kind of get up to the top box, and she had 2 boxes, well, that means they weren't able to get up here for food. So they actually died because the worker bees will not leave the queen, because that's what they're concentrating on, is taking care of their queen in that cluster. Okay, winter. Winter is tough. Okay, so this basically in the fall, I, feed. And this is a great way to feed, is just with a plain old glass container, put some little holes on top of it, and that gets air suction so that the syrup is not coming out, but yet the bees can come up and take the syrup when it's there. So you could do that right up until, it gets too cold that it'll freeze. Bees won't do well with really cold syrup. They'll actually get gut rot. They might. So not a fan of real cold sugar syrup for them. Again, this is the insulation that I was talking about. And then this is not the 2-inch. This is a lot thinner. It looks like it's just, it looks like it's quite thin, actually. However, it might do the job. It's not what I would choose to insulate a hive with. But again, it depends on where you were and the expenses you have. I know the rigid insulation can be quite expensive. However, for me, I have the same insulation for the past 4 years. I just take it off the hive, I put it in the garage and store it, and I take it out in the winter again. So once you have it, it can last you quite some time. So again, this person here used duct tape, all the seams, and just wrap that around their hive. It's like a hug, and it really works. This is a Hive Alive, Patty. This is a fontanant that you can use. I like fontanant simply because it's pretty easy to use. You just take it out of the box, put a little slit in the back of it, and throw it over the hole, over the inner cover, and the bees will come up and take that fontanant and they don't even have to go outside, obviously. They just come and take it from the top box. I really like Five Alive. I have a lot of success with it. This here is if you decide to actually feed by using a sugar brick or a sugar patty. People make this on their own, and you can just put that on the top of their hive, and the bees will go ahead and chow down on that. It's pretty easy to make. It's just sugar and water, and you just have to make it at the right consistency, and it hardens a little bit, and the bees do well with that. And this is just basically, I put this in here because I want you to show you the top pillow. Again, this person just used one piece, and that's great. That looks pretty thick. I use about 8 inches, and that's just what I use. This might work, but I think it's really important to put the top cover on. They basically came out with a study probably about 2 years ago and gave everyone this heads up on how to better overwinterize your hive. And once they put this out, it kind of spread like wildfire, and it actually works. So again, top insulation, and then you just insulate it just as you would with this this kind of hugger, as I call it. The Bee Cozy, I did mention that a lot of people, even if they put the insulation on, also put the Bee Cozy on. Again, it's up to you. I didn't use the Bee Cozy this year simply because I put mine in my shed. They are insulated as they would be outside. However, the only thing they're missing is the Bee Cozy, and I just thought it would be too warm. So this is a Bob Binney recipe. So I love Bob. He actually is very public with this. I had a great chat with him at the Bee Expo about this. So there's different mixtures for each of the seasons of what you're trying to accomplish. So for example, in the winter time, or going into the winter, you use the 1.5 to 2 cups of sugar to 1 part water. And that helps colonies gain weight while maintaining low moisture levels. So that's what we are geared towards when we're going into the winter. We want the colonies to put on a lot of weight so that they have a lot of stuff to go through the winter. And I'll go through the other ones. I have to show you again in other slides, but for the winter, this is what you need to kind of make your hives out of in the fall, going into winter. So winter management, again, gets a bit tangly. In the winter time, you don't have to do a heck of a lot with your hives. Most of your work is in the fall, going to the winter. So in the winter time, again, you really don't open the covers simply because it's too cold. If you open your cover, you're letting all that heat that the bees have taken so much time to create, you're letting that out. Only go into your hives in case of emergency. If you're trying to look at how much resources they have left, sometimes you have to look risk versus benefit. It's better to look and see if they have resources rather than let them starve out through the winter. But you just have to pick a better day to do it. In the winter, a real quick check to make sure they have enough food is you lift it. So obviously, if a top box of 10 frames is about 100 or 60, 100 pounds, when you lift it, you should know exactly the rough estimate of the weight. Depending on how light it is, it may tell you that you need to add some resources for the bees to eat. Listen for activity. Again, I do that. Obviously, I had a lot of videos there recently, and I'm knocking at the hive and going down with my ear to see if I hear anything. I also have a stethoscope that I actually put it to the hive as well to make sure I'm hearing sounds. You should hear a real roar, a constant roar through the entrance of your hive. If your hives are outside, it's important to move the snow away from your entrances. Some people disagree with this. However, I feel, you know what, if like in this bottom picture, if the snow is like right up past the entrances, and if it's a mild day, how in the heck your bee is going to get out? So I usually clear away the entrance. I'll leave the top on because that's extra heat, kind of padding for the bees. But again, I really feel you need to remove it from the entrance to let them out. Usually the heat coming out of the entrance from the bees is actually going to melt away that snow anyway, but as in, you know, I would just check to make sure it's open. And again, risk versus benefit. If you lift that hive by just, you know, lifting it with your hand and you feels really light, you might want to have to just open it up very quickly to see what resources they have and provide them with any emergency feed. I'd rather you do that and not have your bees starved in the winter. It's a horrible thing when that happens. So again, this is the winter feeding. And I had a question about this. Someone asked me, like, midwinter, what do you feed? My two go-tos would be the sugar patties or bricks that you make at home, or the Hive Alive. Now, there's different kinds of fontanette that you can get. I had an Ambrose. I really like that one because it was super thick. And I knew when I put that on, they're going to be good for the winter. So I really like that one. I got that one at Country Fields, I believe. So winter can be really tough on bees in Newfoundland or anywhere. So you have to kind of protect them from not starving. So again, winter feeding methods is to make sure in the fall you have enough honey going on them. This will actually make you a little bit more easy in the winter when you think about how much they weighed in the fall. Again, options for winter feeding would be the sugar bricks or the hard candy boards. And again, that would be the same as the sugar bricks, but just really thinner and more kind of dehydrated. That actually moistens when you put it on the top of the hive so the bees can kind of go up and take a bit of sugar and kind of go down themselves. And the fontanette is what I really like. And that goes right over your inner cover over that hole. Or you can put it directly above where the cluster is, and the bees will kind of come up and eat it from there. Some people also use just plain dry sugar and they spread that around in their hive, granulated sugar. Some people think that that helps with moisture absorption in the hive. I haven't done that method. I've used fontanette and the sugar bricks. I haven't done the dry sugar yet. I'm sure people have. Again, don't feed your bees liquid syrup in cold temperatures. Again, if you're feeding it in the fall, you can, you know, feed 2 to 1, 2 cups of sugar, 1 cup of water, and it's a really thick syrup, but don't feed it if it's below 10 degrees. Moisture is a big bad thing in the hive. Again, wet bees or dead bees. To avoid that, you have to control your ventilation, control the amount of moisture going into your hive, and use a top pillow. And that helps decrease the amount of moisture in the hive. You have to check periodically. Again, don't go open in the hives, you know, once a week. Only check when you absolutely have to, when risk versus benefit. And again, emergency feeding would be fontanette or sugar bricks. And a well-fed colony is a strong colony in the spring. And that's so true. Oh, don't feed pollen patties. I had this conversation on my site there a little while ago. Somebody was feeding pollen patties probably like in February or March. I'm not a fan, simply because when you think about it, the bees will fill up their gut with pollen, and that's going to make them want to use the washroom. If they can't get out and use the washroom, unfortunately, they're probably going to do their business in the hive, and that's not very hygienic. So bees are super hygienic. They know that they don't want to kind of use the washroom in their hive. They'll actually leave and go on a cleansing flight. If they can't do that, you're really asking for trouble. So unless your bees can get out, I wouldn't be putting pollen patties on them. Again, everybody thinks differently about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the cluster. So our bees are in a winter cluster. This up here is a bit of a diagram. I really like it because obviously the bees get in a tight cluster in a real cold day, and on a warmer day, they kind of expand a little bit and is not as tight. They are that tight to maintain temperature, and also they're protecting their queen. So the core of the cluster is about 77 to 95 degrees, and that's near the queen. And they can maintain that through the winter. They have to ensure the queen stays active and begins laying as soon as she can, meaning when the weather starts to warm. So in Newfoundland, that would probably be May. So as soon as the warm weather happens, the cluster starts to break, and that the queen starts getting motivated to lay. So winter bees are really cool. So there's actually heater bees. Never ever thought there was until I actually did some studies on them. So there is in fact heater bees, and they are part of the cluster. They're pretty darn cool. So the winter bees or the heater bees rotate between the outer shell and the inner shell. So basically what happens is that they become heater bees. They stay on the exterior of the cluster, and then eventually they make their way into the middle. And while they're doing that, they're heated. So this is like a thermal camera that we took a picture, and this is the actual what we get. And you can tell the temperature of the bees just looking at that. So what the heater bees do is they crawl into empty cells. They vibrate their muscles to radiate heat into the surrounding brood or cluster. Now, there has been some discussion if, in fact, there is brood during the winter months. Depends on who you talk to. I don't think there is. I'm not sure, but I don't think so, because I think the queen and the worker bees are too busy on keeping it warm in there. So yeah, so they crawl in the cells and keep them warm. The honey stores near the cluster are used for energy, and what I mean by that, again, the cluster moves. So if you have a box, the cluster is moving gradually up, usually up and down, to where the honey is. And remember, the bees need honey for energy to shake. Thermogenesis is what means they shake to keep their body heat, to keep it warm in the cluster. And when temperatures drop too low, the cluster tightens, and their heater bees increase their activity to prevent freezing. So again, the bees kind of take their turns going into the middle of the cluster to coming out. Once the bees start to get cold, they work their way in, and that's where most of the heat is. So spring, so April to May, and again, that could differ in regards to where you are. I love spring. It just gives a good feeling, especially if all of your hives survive the winter. It's even better. So the hive inspections, again, please wait until it gets warm enough to do the inspections, 10 degrees or more. I even like 15. In Newfoundland, the bees will fly when it's a lot less than 10. But again, if you're open up that hive, you want to make sure that, it's warm and the brood is not going to get chilled. So just make sure it's not too cold. So feeding, and again, to Bob Binney, he makes 1 cup of sugar, I believe, 1 cup of water, I believe, 1-on-1, in order to increase the laying and also to increase the production of the bees, and add pollen patties. So pollen is when it needs to go on in April or May. Pollen actually is pure protein, and basically when you add pollen patties, it increases the chances of the queen laying. So when the worker bees feed the queen, they're actually giving her some of the pollen that they've achieved from the pollen patties, and that will kind of motivate her to start laying. You also want to look at the queen health. So if the colony is weak or queenless, obviously you either have to merge colonies or you'll have to introduce a new queen. It would be a very difficult time to introduce a new queen in Newfoundland because obviously we don't have a lot of queen breeders. And there's not a lot of people getting rid of queens in April to May. So usually you'll have to merge your colonies. Again, varroa mites, this is in the spring. You need to have a check to see what your levels are. And depending on what your levels are, you'll have to treat accordingly. Clean and maintain the hive tools and prevent spread of disease. So in the spring, it's yucky. Sometimes you're going to get a lot of dead bees in the bottom of your hive. You know, some dead bees are normal simply because it's just bees die through the winter. You just basically have to make sure you clean that out. I wouldn't want all that stuff to maintain in the bottom of the hive. And then there's a lot of bacteria build up. You just want to make sure you clean all your bottom board out once you can get in April and May. Oh, Bob Binney. Okay. So again, 1-to-1, I was right. So 1 part sugar. So 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of water. You mix that all together. And that's what you use in the spring. Again, probably in April, you might want to use the first one, and that would be 1 part water to 1.5 part sugar. And that's ideal for brood rearing and comb building without excessive weight gain. So again, every beekeeper is different. I always go 1 part water and 1.5 cups of sugar for my syrup feed in the spring. And again, in the winter, I use the really heavy one, which would be 2 cups of water and 1 part sugar. So now we're going to move into your nuke. So any new beekeeper, you start your beekeeping journey by either a nuke. You can get like a swarm and put it in. Someone catch a swarm and they give you a swarm and it's in a hive box, or packaged bees. So I'm going to talk about a nuke because usually that's the most common way that a beekeeper starts their journey is by a nuke. So the first thing you need to do when you're thinking about getting your nuke or when the day is coming is you need to kind of get ready where your nuke is going to go. So make sure you have your hive stand ready. You know exactly where the bees are going. Best idea for where you're putting your bees is a place where there's most sunshine and shelter. So as I said last week, the sun is like coffee to bees. When they see that sun shining early in the morning, it kind of motivates them to kind of get out and start their day work. So again, that's where you want to place your hives. You also have to think about how your bees are going to come home. So usually that's a conversation that you have with the person that's providing you with the nuke. They can either put it in a cardboard box, which is very temporary, or what I've done in the past is that I ask the person that's getting the bees for me to bring in their hive box probably 3 to 4 weeks before. I'll actually get the nuke in their hive box and get them all arranged so they don't have to do that. So when they get their nuke, it's already in a hive box and they're already comfortable and they're actually building already. Again, that depends on the beekeeper, what you do. Transporting your nuke, this can be really tangly, and I've actually heard of people lose their nukes because they're not going right home after they pick them up. When you think about it, it could be a warm day. All these bees are jammed in this box. It's hot, and they're not getting a lot of ventilation. So my big piece of advice is the day you go get your nuke, make sure you have nothing to do on the way home. Just go right home and put your bees in place. Bees can overheat very quickly. Another good idea, make sure that you have the box, either if it's just a cardboard box, make sure that it's not going to tip in the car, because I certainly want a whole box of bees come out while you're driving. I wouldn't mind, but you might not like it. And if it's a hive, if the beekeeper actually puts your nuke in your own hive, just make sure that all the entrances are closed and there's no place for the bees to escape. I've had that happen, and they can escape in a very small place when you think about it. So those are 2 things you need to do. So once you get home, just if it's a cardboard box, just place the cardboard box where you're going to be placing your bees and just give them time to settle. When you think about it, they just had a big journey. They were in a car. They were in a lot of heat. So I would just leave them alone 1 to 2 hours before you actually transfer them to their new hive. You could open the entrance here of the cardboard box. You could do that, but I would just leave them for a couple of hours before I'd actually move them over. So if you have to transfer your nuke into your hive, basically take out the middle frames. And you want to be able to put all those frames that are in your nuke in exact same order as what they are in that box. Bees are a little bit like OCD, so they like things to remain the same. So you have to put your frames in the same place as they are in that hive. And that's just, you know what, bees obviously have the brood nest in a particular area, and you want to make sure the brood nest is all put together. And that's just ensuring that happens. So take out your middle frames and then pop the other ones right into the place. People always say, and this frightened me to death, the first nuke I had when I was transferring it into a hive box, I was frightened to death. I was going to roll the queen. That's what they told me. So rolling the queen would be killing your queen. And basically what happens is that when you transfer your frames over, you'll accidentally squat your queen. And that's not good. So just be really, really careful in what you're doing to make sure that doesn't happen. And again, once you fit, usually it's 5 frames in your hive, just fill it up with the rest of the frames that you have and you'll be on your way. I always suggest this to people who have nukes, is that when you install your nukes, just make sure that you have sugar water on the top of them. You know what? If the bees don't want it, they're not going to come up and get it. However, in my opinion, if they need it, they're going to go up and they're going to get it. I'm a big fan of bees know best. And if, you know what, if they feel they need more resources, they're going to go up and take it. I just rather have it there. And when you think about it as well, your nuke has a lot of work to do, especially if you're going from like a cardboard into their own hive. They have a lot of building that they have to do. They're going to need energy from that. And depending on that time of year, there may not be a lot of nectar on the go or pollen. So the least you can do is providing with some food on a temporary basis. And then close the hive up gently and leave alone for 7 days. So I'm going to go on a rant about that now. I had a client. I had a new beekeeper get a nuke from me. When I actually provided her with the nuke, I reminded her, you know, just leave the nuke alone for 7 days. I have them already in their hive. You don't need to kind of go in and at them. Just let them be. So that was fine. That was the directions that I shared. About 3 hours later, I get an email from her with pictures of the frames in the hive. So what she did, she went home, she whipped apart a nuke, and she started taking pictures. So that time of year, it's okay. You know, it's normal to see 1 or 2 dead bees in the frame. It's not, you know, it's not a big thing. These things happen. However, there was, I think, 2 dead bees in all 5 frames, and she took a picture of those and was, you know, questioning me, which was fine. I don't mind. But again, totally went against what I had suggested. Honeybees, especially as a nuke, do not need to be picked and prodded on, especially if you just pick them up. They need time to just get used to their new environment. So you just need to leave them alone. When you think about it, every time you lift that cover, you're putting your queen behind 3 days. So you might not think you're stressing your queen out, but you definitely are. When you think about it, the hive is in complete darkness all the time. As soon as you lift that cover, light is coming in. And that's going to stress your queen out for sure, simply because she never goes outside. So, benefits of open feeding. So, I do like open feeding, but it has to be at the right time of year. So, supplemental nutrition, especially during a nectar dearth. So, for example, if there's not a lot of flowers around, or it's really early in the spring, I'm okay with open feeding. It's convenient as well if you don't want to keep going up and feeding all those feeders up. You can just put one big jug away from your hive, and that allows the bees to come and feed. It also helps prevent starvation and supports colony health. Now, there is some bad things of it, and this is probably more important than the good things. So I did that once when I first started beekeeping. I had an open feeder. This was when my 2 hives were in my backyard, and holy cow. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There wasn't a place in the air in my backyard that never had a bee. I think we had bees from, I'd say, Corner Brook come in. Like every friggin' bee in the area was in my backyard. but that also included wasps. So I learned my lesson with that. I don't do open feeding, especially in the summer months. I only do it in the spring and towards the fall. But yeah, so what it is it tracks every pest that you want to believe. It can kind of induce robbing behavior, encourage it, which is what you don't want. And it can also spread diseases. So anything that bee has when they come to your yard, if your bees are kind of feeding out of the same source, they're probably going to get it as well. So that's a bad thing about open feeding. Again, if you do want to do this, it's important to put it away from your apiary, 20 to 30 feet away, and that so it doesn't induce robbing behavior. Again, the sugar syrup 1-to-1 in the spring and fall, 2-to-1 in the fall, and avoid using honey. You want to make sure you clean them regularly, and again, you want to monitor them to make sure that there's no robbing going on or distress. And again, I mentioned this already. The ideal months for open feeding is October and November, and early feeding is March and April. This is my buddy Ian Stepler. So I just wanted to include this. This is pretty darn cool. Now again, Ian has, my gosh, a load of hives. I'm not going to guess how many hives he has. I guess it's up in the thousands. He's a commercial beekeeper, really wonderful man. So this is just his open feeding. So I just want to show you this. This is big scale.
Well, it didn't take long for the bees to find the open feeders. So I have about 400 liters of sucrose out here for them. I dump a little bit of sucrose right on top, just to attract them to the feeders. And then inside, they crawl through the holes and down through the straw, take their treat, and fly back to their hive.
Wow, this can happen. This is around pollen. This was my backyard. It's crazy.
Yesterday, and they're just about done. There's like a million bees here. So I'm out of ultra bee now. So I'm going to be feeding some of my leftover beef from last year, and I got some big soy flour sitting on. We just set them up and see the color harving. So I'm just going to keep the flour too. But we'll have any more of this good stuff together. But we got to be close to pulling. So with some good, nice days coming up here, I think I hope their attention's drawn to the trees.
There we go. So that's pretty cool, but also pretty scary when you look at all those bees. I wouldn't mind being in that area though. So again, we're going to go back to your nuke. After installing your nuke, you leave it alone for 7 days. Then what? So you go ahead when it's time to do a hive check. In that hive check, what you're looking for is the queen. You want to make sure you have a queen. If you don't see your queen, and that's okay because she's quick, and as a new beekeeper, you might not see her clearly. Just make sure you have eggs or young larvae, and that's going to tell you that I have a queen. Comb building, just make sure that most of the frames are being drawn out in regards to that drawn comb. And you want to look at the food storage just to make sure they have enough nectar or pollen, and if, again, still sugar feed if you need to. And look at the overall health of the nuke, look at the pests and any signs of diseases. So if everything looks good, then close it up, and again, let them continue work. And again, I really wouldn't lift the cover for another 7 days unless you feel that there's something going wrong. Then go ahead for sure. Again, I'm a big fan of risk versus benefit. So if it's beneficial to open and have a look, well, go ahead. So I'm kind of jumping all over here, guys, and I apologize, but these are questions that other people have given me. Someone asked me about what is the best colors to paint your hives. I'm a big fan of having all different colors, but let's go by the books here. So white, my friend Gina actually has all white colonies. It looks pretty tight. It looks pretty clean. I like it actually. So white reflects sunlight and keeps the hive cooler in the summer. When you go with the light colors like blue, yellow, and green, it blends in with nature, so it reduces overheating. And pastel shades, so soft colors work well with temperatures and control, and it also looks pretty cool. What you need to avoid is all the dark colors. So remember, so bees, when they see red, they really see black. So you don't want to be painting your hives red. And again, black, they see black, and you don't really want to be painting them black either. It absorbs too much heat, and it makes too much warm for the summer. And again, you also have to think about when bees leave the hive, they orientate to the area around them. So they look at their hive, they look at special markings of the hive, they look at trees. But again, if bees leave, they want to make sure they're going to find their way home. I'm a big fan of making it known that this is their hive. If I even have to put a bit of a different stick on it or an X, just so they know, they take note of that. Use exterior paint. It's often usually good to paint your hive simply because it'll last a heck of a lot longer than if you don't. Outside, again, when you are painting your hives, you don't paint anywhere inside the hive. So a good rule of thumb is anywhere that the bees' feet touch, you don't paint. You leave that bare wood. Make sure your paint is dry 24 to 48 hours before you install your bees. And again, a lot of people use different color hives, and that's what I do, simply because it allows the bees to kind of know what home is theirs, because they take note of that when they're on their orientation flights. This is another question that I had coming from someone, and they basically said, you know what, if I want to start beekeeping, what is the bare bones I need? And can you tell me where to get them? So I'm not getting any cash for this in regards to giving people shout outs, but I am going to tell you where I would be purchasing my stuff. So first thing you need, this is a must, is you need a hive tool. So again, there's lots of different hive tools out there that you can pick from. This one over here is my favorite. Again, this one is very popular, but just make sure you have a hive tool. You can get a hive tool on Amazon. You can get a hive tool at like Dancing Bees, Country Fields, Maritime Bee Company. There's lots of places to get hive tools. You don't have to be spending a lot on it. Again, I think I saw the other day you can get like 2 hive tools for like $15 or something like that. So again, shop around. You don't have to buy everything from a really expensive bee store. I'm a big fan of Amazon. They have good quality stuff there. And as well, you might want to think Amazon also has bee supply store. So Foxhound Bee Company, they're a great company that I had chatted with when I was at the expo. They are on Amazon and selling their products. So again, Amazon is cool. A suit. You really need a suit or a jacket. I like a suit just because you're all protected. Again, you could pay $400 for a suit. You can get like a Sting Stopper suit or a Guardian suit. They're wonderful. They're beautiful. However, I'm not sure if you want to go out and spend that much money right at the front of your bee journey. I would go, you know what? Again, Amazon, they have these fantastic Humblebee suits. Sometimes you can get these on sale. I picked up extra for my apiary simply because I have a lot of people coming and I just want to make sure they have a good suit. And I think I got one like for $50. I got the other one for $70. So really reasonably priced, and they're good quality suits and you're not going to get stung in them, and they're ventilated. So have a look at Humblebee, guys, on Amazon. You don't have to, but these are just little tips I have for you. Again, gloves, you're going to need those. Those are what you need to start with. Again, you can buy those on Amazon. Foxhound Bee Company are also there. They have some pretty cool gloves. You don't have to spend a lot on them. You don't even have to buy these kind of gloves. It all depends on what your personal preference is. But this is what I started with. So it's totally your call. Hives. You can spend a heck of a lot on a hive, or you can spend a moderate amount. I do have to note Dancing Bees or Country Fields. I think there's also a store in Ontario, Humblebee, not the suit Humblebee. It's actually a store. They have some really good hives there, and you can buy a kit. So I've encouraged a new beekeeper out by Grossmoor in Newfoundland to look up Dancing Bees, and she actually did, and she's getting 2 of the Dancing Bee hives. And they're fabulous. So it comes with a hat. Some of it comes with your suit, comes with your tools, comes with your frames and your smoker. all for the low price of maybe, I don't know, $350, maybe. Could be even a little bit more than that. But again, you're getting everything that you need. It's good quality stuff. I wouldn't be buying a hive off Amazon, just saying. But again, it's totally up to you. I wouldn't. When you can get a kit like this that includes everything, or even just a hive, it's a pretty good deal. I would do it that way. You also have to think about a hive stand. That's something you need to start with. I wouldn't recommend putting your hives right on the ground. You're running a risk of pests getting in, or them tipping over. You want to make sure they're in a good stout quality, some sort of stand to get them off the ground. You know what? Simple. These cement blocks, you get 4 of those. You could put your hive right on top of those and put a ratchet strap around it. This is what I use. And I also have wooden ones, but I do like the cement ones. You can kind of move your hives wherever you want after you have those. And ratchet straps, another important thing that you need to start with. You always want to put a ratchet strap it on, simply because wind could tip over your hive. It could be meatballs tipping over your hives, just trying to be bad. So make sure or a bear. So you just want to make sure you have your ratchet straps on to keep all your hive together. So that's the bare minimum. And this is just a review again of the hive, what you need to look for. Again, you can get hives 8 or 10. It's totally your preference. I've lately moved into the 8s simply because I had a shoulder injury and it was easier for me to lift. It wasn't as heavy. So I like 8s, but again, I do have 10s. So again, you go with your outer cover. Make sure it has a top to make sure the steel roof, make sure that water is not going to seep into it. You have your inner cover. Again, that's more for insulation. And there's a hole here in your inner cover, and that's how you feed your bees. You have, this is like your super. So this would be, for example, where your honey is going to be in a super box. And then you have a queen excluder. I don't really like queen excluders. I find that my queen do not usually go up on my supers when I have them there. Some people live by them. I'm not a fan of them. I think some worker bees actually die because of them, trying to get through them, especially the plastic ones. But again, it's a personal preference. You can get a queen excluder. I guess people put in queen excluders basically because they want to ensure that the queen doesn't go up into the super where your honey is and start laying eggs. Again, I've never had that happen, but it's up to you. Your hive body, a brood chamber, this is where your brood is going to be. Again, 8 or 10. The brood is usually in the middle frames, and as you work your way out, that's where the resources are usually kept. And then your bottom board and the hive reducer, entrance reducer is important, really important, especially like, for example, when you're getting into August, when the wasps are really bad, the yellow jackets, and they're trying to get in your hive, and they do, you can kind of close the entrance up real small so that it gives the bees more of a chance to defend their area. So it gives them less to defend, and they can kind of defend it a little bit better, easier, because it's less for them to go after. So again, you need an entrance reducer. So this is basically the basic getup of what you need to start beekeeping. Okay. So I also was asked to talk about drones, and drones are not talked a lot about in the bee world. It's all about workers. It's all about queens. And simply because the drones, you know what, they don't do a heck of a lot in a hive. It's the worker bees that do everything. However, they do the most important job of impregnating the queen. So they do a heck of a lot, because without the drones, there'd be no queen, there'd be no eggs, there'd be no nothing. So we're just going to go through this a little bit. So drone is the boy bees. Worker is the girl bees. So first we're going to go through the development in genetics. So when you think about it, the drones are haploid. And by that I mean they get absolutely all of their genes from their queen because they're not fertilized. So it's an unfertilized egg. It's only coming from the queen, and she gives all of her genetics and everything to that drone. So again, unfertilized eggs, gets everything from the queen mother. They have one set of chromosomes, and that would be from the mom. The worker bees have two, and also the queen has two sets of chromosomes, and they're diploid, and that's 32 chromosomes in total. So as a simple breakdown, this gets a little confusing. I had to take a little think about this when I actually was learning about this in school, is that the drone has a grandfather but doesn't have a father. Just think about that. So the drone has a grandfather but doesn't have a father. So in simple terms is that the queen lays an unfertilized egg and develops into a drone. The drone gets all of his genes from the mother, meaning half of his genes originally come from his grandfather. That's a lot, I know, but that's what they say. So he doesn't have a dad, but he has a grandfather. Pretty cool. Amazing, actually, when you think about it, that it only has the genes from the mom, haploid, meaning one. So developmental stage for the drone is much longer than it is for the worker or the queen. So the drone, it takes a total of 24 days for it to go from an egg to a fully fledged drone. So it takes a lot longer. Larger cells for a drone brood. So as you can see over here in the slide, these bigger ones, I call them popcorn, they're all drone brood. And basically what happens is that the queen lays an egg, an unfertilized egg in a cell that she feels is big enough to develop the drone brood. So that's why sometimes worker bees actually develop wax on the bottom of their frame, and they actually lay eggs. The queen lays unfertilized egg, which would be drone eggs in that. And that would basically mean it's bigger. The cell is bigger, and it allows them to fit in a drone brood because they're much larger. So the autonomy drones have absolutely humongous eyes. They're absolutely bigger and bulkier than worker bees. They're a little bit smaller than the queen bee, and the wings are longer. So their wings are longer simply because they have to fly fast in order to mate with the queen. So that's why they're equipped with stronger, longer wings. They also have larger eyes. So this is a worker bee right here. As you can tell, the compound eyes are pretty defined on the side of the head, whereas the drones, the compound eyes actually goes to the top of their forehead. They're supposed to have 3 little eyeballs on the top of their forehead called ocelli, and the drone's eyes get so big, it actually just squats those ocelli out and they lose those. So yeah, so their eyes are a lot bigger, and that's so they can spot the queen. So again, they're made to fly faster. They have longer wings in order to get the queen when she's mating, and they actually have bigger eyes to see the queen. Drones have no stinger, if you can believe that. So if you're practicing marking your queens, you can always practice on drones. Grab the drone and kind of go away and practice marking your queen, because drones can't sting you. So because they can't sting, they can't defend the hive. So yeah, they don't do a lot. So life cycle and behavior, the main thing they are is to mate with the queen. So what happens is that the drones find specialized area called drone congregation area. And this is an area that's about, it could be 10 kilometers from the hive, and it is packed with every drone in the area. So the drones go to the specialized area. And as far as I know, it's the same area every year. They did a study on that. So they go to the special area, the queen flies in that area, and the quickest, fastest drone is the ones that mate with the queen. The queen could go fly sometimes up to, I've heard 20 kilometers to go to a drone congregation area. So she goes pretty far. So drones, they live for about 90 days. They die right after they mate with the queen right away. In the late fall, they're actually kicked out of the hive by their worker bees. So what happens is that they pull them out. Worker bees feel that they're a drain on the colony. They're eating all the resources. So they got to kick them out. So they kick them out. They will not let them back in. And what happens is the drones actually either starve to death or freeze to death outside the colony. It's actually, and it's sad, it's actually cool to watch that happen. Here's a video. Let's watch this. This is a worker bee. Choose the wings off the drone.
The bee trying to get the drone out of the hive. And she's biting
Poor guy.
him. Telling him where to go. Whose wings are there?
What a bully.
And she will chew off typically the wings, or legs, or something.
So this is exactly what you're going to see if you sit outside your hive in the fall. This is real.
So, yeah.
Okay, there you go. So that's something you're going to see. So just also want to say the drones don't have any duties or activities in the hive. When you think about it, they cannot collect nectar or pollen. They have specialized mouth parts that don't allow them to collect a lot of that stuff. They don't have pollen pockets, so they don't go out and collect pollen. They actually depend on their worker bee to feed them. So this picture down here is Trophaelis, and that's how they feed each other, but mouth to mouth. And this worker bee is feeding 2 of the drones. Again, seasonal importance that they're only needed in the spring and summer, and that's when the queens are going to be going out to mate. When the spring and summer actually happens, the queen is the one that decides whether she's going to lay a fertilized or an unfertilized egg. She realizes in the spring and summer that, we need to start producing drones for mating flights. So she actually starts dropping unfertilized eggs. And that time of year is when you'll see your hives the most full of drone brood. Again, the purpose of it is to mate with the queen in the drone congregation areas. And you know what? You never see that. They did some research and actually tried to, do some studies on drone congregation areas. They're very difficult to find simply because they're so high up in the air. Somebody asked me today whether queens mate in the hive, and no, they don't. Queens only mate in the air, and it's about 20 to 40 meters off the ground. As soon as they mate, the drone drops to the ground and passes away. You do hear a pop as soon as they mate, and again, the drone passes away. Sad story. Honeybee stings. So this happens. I'm just going to do this. I think we'll save the rest because I've been on it now an hour and I don't want to lose anybody. So the most painful place to be stung would be your upper lip is pretty painful. That's 8.7. Poor guys, your penis or shaft is about 7.5. That's pretty painful. Let's see here. I think that's the highest. 9 would be your nose, most painful. I've heard people being stung in the nose. Very painful. So this is just basically a chart telling you of the pain. As a beekeeper, you often have to worry about your hands. Top of your finger is a 6.7, so that's pretty high. The less, let's see here. Where is the less it hurts? It says here's a skull, 2.3. So it's a pretty cute little diagram. So honeybee stings are very common for beekeepers. And anyone near bees. Again, bees aren't aggressive. I had this discussion the other day with the town council. Bees aren't aggressive. So bees are generally not going to come out of their hive and sting you when you walk by them. They're not going to. Bees are generally focused around foraging, around collecting nectar and pollen, cleaning up the hive. They're not focused on stinging people. So it's important to realize bees usually sting when they're actually in defense, if you're doing something with the colony, if you're doing a hive check, or if they feel there's a predator trying to get into their colony. So how a bee sting works, this here is a really good view of an actual stinger. And you know what? It hurts. It hurts. I think it hurts more than an actual tattoo needle going in once. It hurts. And this is a real big focus area of the stinger. And again, the honeybee stinger is barbed. So when the honeybee stings you, it cannot hull its stinger out where it's barbed. So what happens is that the honeybee keeps pulling and pulling, and when they actually pull, they'll pull out parts of their intestine along with the stinger. So it's quite painful for the honeybee. Honeybee doesn't want to sting you because they know they'll die. And there's the barb, the venom. So what happens is that when they sting you and when they pull out, the stinger stays in you, and there's this little venom sac. And if you watch it, you could see after the bee leaves you, the venom sac is still pumping venom into you, automatically pumping. Even though it hurts, it's pretty cool to see. You also have to be really careful because a lot of people can have an allergic reaction. It can be quite severe. And again, self-defense mechanism, that's why they sting you. They don't sting you because they like stinging. So immediate response to a sting, what you should do is when you get stung is to whip out that stinger, and you will see it on the bottom picture. You can see like the stinger and then part of the intestine of the bee. Just make sure you haul that stinger out because it's going to automatically keep pumping venom in you. So you just kind of scrape that out with your hive tool or with your finger, and get that out of you as soon as you can. Wash the area. And again, I know I'm bad at this as a beekeeper. I don't run down and wash my stings. I just kind of muck through it. But maybe you should go down and wash it. And again, if you get really have a reaction, make sure you put a lot of cold compress and anti-itch cream or antihistamine. So I've had beekeepers before, again, doing their hive checks or being with a bee mentor doing a hive check. I'm being stung like over 100 times. They obviously have to go to hospital. So it's important to know, I guess, what reaction you expect your body to have. Again, you're probably not sure and how it will react to over 100 stings, but I'm thinking it's going to be severe. Again, you will get to know how your body responds over time. Maybe you might be a person that needs an EpiPen every time they go near their hives. I'm not sure. And those are something that you'll learn over time how that is. So why do we get stung by bees? So there's many different little hints of how you can prevent being stung. So keep covered. And that's why I say, you know what, wear your bee suit and your jacket and your hat and your, anything you can to kind of cover your skin. We're beekeepers. We're not superheroes. No one's going to judge you because you wear a suit. I wear a suit and I've been after bees a long time. So again, wear your protective gear, and that's the best way you can try to avoid being stung. Keep your gloves on. And again, I understand a lot of people don't like wearing gloves because you lose the sensitivity of feeling the bees on the frame. Again, once you get used to working with bees, maybe you can reduce the big bee gloves to like latex gloves. That works as well. Again, you have a greater risk of being stung with those on. But if you're cool with that, at least you're wearing something on your hands. Be gentle. So I often say to new beekeepers, you know what? Beekeeping is like Tai Chi. You have to be really gentle and slow with your movements. And if you go knocking frames or if you go, accidentally dropping them, you're going to get them pissed off and they're probably going to sting you. So again, be very gentle. It says brush here. In my opinion, they do not like bee brushes. That kind of aggravates them. That's why our suits are white. The bee suit is white. It's probably, if they were black and you go up near a beehive, they're probably going to think you're a bear and they will attack you. And that's just because they're protective. And again, depending on the kind of year. So when I go down to the penitentiary, I have to have a guard with me at all times. So the correctional officer usually is standing with me or standing over the way, and the correctional officer always gets stung. Why? I think it's because of what they have on. They're dressed in total black. They actually have a black hat on, so that's probably the reason. So again, you need to wear white or something lighter colored. Make sure you fasten up. So the place where you put on your suit, the neck part, like right here, you have to make sure that the zippers are together because bees can get in really small spaces and they'll sting you. So make sure you actually have that closed properly. One of my university's professors said, if a bee ever gets in your veil, and I did it, once you stop like freaking out, I actually look up at the sun. And what happens is that the bee actually goes to where the sun is and is going to take their mind off of you. And then that gives you time to kind of take off their veil and get the bee out. So just a little hint there. You also have to make sure of your legs and your socks. Make sure it's all tucked in. Make sure there's no skin showing because bees will sting you. Make sure your bee stuff is clean. So if you do a hive check, for example, and you get stung by a bee and they sting you on your suit, that pheromone is going to remain on your suit. So when you go up and you do, for example, another hive check, probably in another apiary the same day, those bees are going to have a sense of those pheromones and they're going to get their defenses up. So just make sure that you clean your stuff. Again, venom, as I said, like if a bee stings you, the venom is going to be there, the pheromone's going to be there. So you need to make sure that's clean. A lot of people as well, new beekeepers, they get into an apiary and they start flotting at, bees coming at their way. That's going to tick them off. So don't do that. Even if you do very carefully, just moving across to move bees away from your face, that's a lot better than swatting at them. They won't be pissed off if you gently just move them. And I know it's hard to do if your anxiety's on bust and you're not used to being around bees, but hopefully the longer you're around them, the more comfortable you'll be. And don't be smelly. By that, I mean perfumes or even deodorant, anything really strong smelling, they're not going to react very well to. Also garlic, drinking, bananas. If you go have a banana, don't go up at your bees because bananas and the Kashnov gland, which is the alarm pheromone, smells very similar. So if you go up after eating a banana, they're going to think you're alarm pheromone and they're going to start getting a little bit unhappy with you. And again, when you think about where you put your hives, just make sure you put them in a safe place, probably away from a main area where all the people are. Just make sure they're a little bit isolated. And again, that's just for their protection because you know what? I wouldn't want a bee to sting somebody and then have to move your whole hive away. It's better to, at the first of it, just make sure they're in a safer place. The round dance. And again, someone asked me about this. So bees communicate by pheromones, which is like perfume, and they also communicate by dances. So the two big dances that they use is the round dance and the waggle dance. Okay. Excuse me. So the round dance is usually basically to tell the bees that there's food close by. So usually the food is about 50 meters away. So with the round dance, they don't give specific direction. They don't tell, go out and make a left or 30 degrees. They basically just do the round dance and tell them that it's 50 meters away. So what happens is that a forager bee comes back into the hive, goes into the frame, and they start doing this dance, which is a circle round motion and turn around and a circle round motion again. So what happens? The other bees pick up on this dance and they pick up on it basically from their antennas, mainly because when you think about the hive is completely in darkness. So they pick up on it by their antennas, by their vibrations, but they know that that's a round dance and there's food nearby. Antennas. Again, what happens as well, really cool, is that when the forager bee is doing the round dance, they may also spit out little pieces of nectar to give the worker bees a sample of what actually is there. So that'll entice them even more to go to where the resources are. And the response would be it recruits worker bees to kind of go out and forage that particular area and bring back the resources to the hive. So here's the round dance. This is really cool. Here it is here. See the going around in circles. It goes around, it goes around. And that's pretty easy to see when you're doing a hive inspection or if you go up and see your hive and you pull a frame and you see that. It kind of jumps out at you because it's very different movement than what they usually move like on a frame. So you'll see that pretty quick. And again, that's the round dance, telling them that there's food close by, 50 meters away. So the other one is the waggle dance. Now the waggle dance is incredible. The waggle dance is like totally surprising when I tell you about it. The waggle dance basically tells the bees exactly the direction, like the 30-degree angle or 90-degree angle to where the food is. So what they do is they come in, the forager bees come in, and they have in their internal map exactly where this forage place is. So they come in and they actually dance that off on the frame. So for example, if the food was a 30-degree angle away from the hive, so the hive is at the bottom, they know the sun is 90 degrees, so they will dance 30 degrees, and that tells them exactly where the food is. So after they get that information, they go out, they forage, take a 30 angle turn, and bam, that's where the food is. It's a figure 8 pattern, and in the middle, the waggle, in the middle is where they round up, and the more they waggle, it means the better the forage is, or the better the resources are. So if they're like going crazy, waggling in the middle, that means there's really good forage material and they should go. Again, the duration and intensity of the waggle communicates the distance of the resource and how good the resource is. This is funny. I just had to include this. I had this the other day come, and the honeybee is doing a waggle dance, and the other bee says this could be an email. Not likely, but here is the waggle dance. It's kind of like the round dance, but when you look at it, it's more of a figure 8 movement. It's not complete circles. And see how the bees are observing this, usually by their antennas. And again, that forager bee might be spitting out little pieces of what they found, and that will tell them exactly, or entice them to go get the resources. Okay, and I think that's it. Let's see here. Oh my goodness. Okay. Of course, the last slide would fool up me. Okay, guys. So I think that's it. I don't think I have time to go into all of it. What I'll do is that this is the disease part. We've been on for an hour and 20 minutes. I don't want to bore anybody else, but I have a lot of slides just about the different diseases, and then I move into what products are in the hive. So if people are interested, I can certainly do that next Monday. And anything else that anyone wants me to talk about, I certainly can do that. But I think it's too much to add today. I do have a question here. It says, will a honey-bound hive increase swarming chances? That's a good question. I don't think it would increase swarming chances. It would basically, the queen, when a hive is honey-bound, the queen has no other place to lay. So she just runs out of places to lay. I don't think that would promote a swarm. I could be wrong. If other people know different, please let me know. A swarm is usually when the colony is overcrowded, super overcrowded, packed tight. The bees can't turn. The bees are so packed tight that they can't smell their queen's pheromone. So that would what be promoting the swarm. Again, a honey-bound hive is just the hive has too much honey in it and there's no places for the queen to lay. So you either have to take out some of that honey frames and add a frame of just wax to let the queen lay in those cells. Again, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I believe that that's the right information. So guys, I think that's everything that I want to discuss today. If you have any questions, you can email me, or if you want to quickly put it in the comment section, I'll have a chat about them when I come in. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got a lot of information from it, and I look forward to your feedback. So you can just drop me a line and let me know what you think, and let me know if you want to have the session again next Monday, and that would be about the different diseases and the products in the hive and whatever else you want me to talk about. Okay, guys, I guess that's it. I'm lonely. I wish you could talk to me. That can't happen. So I guess that's everything. Okay, take care, guys. Bye.